Hello and welcome back to episode 2 of my Minecraft modding tutorial for 1.16. In the last episode we set up a basic mod, so if you haven't done that yet you should go check that out. Today we're going to be creating blocks and items, so let's begin. So this is our main class, which means all of the setting up and loading the mod is going to happen in this class. However, all of our content is going to happen somewhere else. So let's create a new package. So let's right click on our main package, go to new and package. And we're going to be splitting our mod into 3 sections. Core, which is going to be all the loading and all the stuff that actually interacts with Minecraft. Common, which is going to be all of our custom features, such as blocks with special features and tile entities and containers. And client, which is stuff that happens only with the client, for example, screens, particles, and rendering. So let's make our core package. And inside our core package, we're going to make an init package. So we're going to write .core.init, and if we press finish, we should see our core.init. In init, we're going to initialize all our features. So let's create a new class in here called itemInit, where we are going to initialize items. So let's create a public static final deferred register, which is going to have our register for all the items, and this is a registry of items, and let's just call it items. And we're going to set it to be equal to deferred register, and we're going to delete all of this, .create, and we can use the arrow keys to select the second one, and here we're going to type forge registries .items. And then you can see it wants string mod ID. So what we do when it wants a mod ID, instead of writing the mod ID again, we go to tutorial mod.mod ID. And now we've created a deferred register, but you can see the item is giving us an error, so you can press Ctrl-Shift-O to import it. It doesn't know which item to import though, so when we want an item that's in the game, we use net.minecraft.item.item. Now, to add an item to that register, we do public static final, and this time it's going to be an item, and let's call it example item, but you can call it whatever you want. This can't have any spaces and it should be all in caps, and that's equal to items.register. In the first slot we put our registry name. In my case it's example item, which is basically the same as this but lowercase, and this has an underscore. And next we need a supplier, so instead of just saying new item, we write 2 brackets, an arrow like this, and then write new item. However, this gives us an error because this needs a properties thing, so we write new item.properties here. However, we set this to an item. This is wrong. This should be a registry object of item. To give the item properties, after the .properties, we can write like a tool type if it's a tool, or like a max damage if it has durability. To get it into a tab, we write .item group. We write .group because instead of creative tabs, when we code, we use item groups. And now to reference an item group, we do item group dot, and then we have all the different creative tabs here. So I'm just going to put mine in miscellaneous for now. I'll show you how to create a custom creative tab later, but for now we're just going to use a Minecraft one. Let's press Ctrl-Shift-F to format the code, and you can see it splits it on a few different lines. Now we actually need to register all these items. So this is as simple as going into our tutorial mod class. After our event bus, we're going to type itemInit, which is the class that we created, .items, which is our register, .register, and then we pass in the iEvent bus that we have up here. And that is actually it. Now our items will load into the game. However, we never actually told our mod what to call the item or what it should look like. So for that, we use JSON files. In our source main resources, we also want to create a new package. And this time I'm going to call it assets, and then our mod ID once again. So my mod ID is tutorial mod, and then I'm going to put .lang, which is our language file. Now we're going to create a new file this time, not a class, in our lang folder, and it's going to be called en_us item.json. So this file is only for the United States English. If we want, for example, Great British English, we write english.gb.json, or Italian it'll be it.it.json. But since I'm English and by default Minecraft is ENUS, I'm going to use this. So JSON files are a bit different to Java. So we're going to start by having brackets like this, curly brackets. Then I'm going to press tab and write speech marks, and this is our key. And our key is going to be item.tutorialmod, because if it's a Minecraft item, it will be item.minecraft. And then we're going to write this string that we wrote here, so example item. And now for that key, for each item we need to give it a name, so I'm going to call it example item. And now we've just mapped this item.tutorialmod.example item to example items. This is what it will show up as. Next we need a model which basically points to the location of our texture. So let's close enus.json, right click on this and create a new package. And this is important. We want to write .model.item, and this has to be singular. So let's click finish. And once again, let's create a new file. And this time we call it the exact string that we set over there. So I set it to example item. So it will be example item.json. And then I'm going to once again open brackets, but item models look a bit different. So we need the parent key, which is going to be item/generated. So this will give it the basic item model that all items have. Next, we need to give it the textures. So we're going to put a comma, and on a new line, we're going to have textures. However, items can have multiple textures, so this time we're going to open curly brackets and close them down here. And now in here, we define our texture. So the key for the first texture, or the main texture, is layer 0. So we're going to write layer 0, and then we write the path of our texture here. And the path of our texture is our mod ID, so in my case tutorial mod, items / example item. And finally we need to create our texture. So let's right click here, create new, and then package, and this time we're going to have textures plural .items plural. And now in here we place our PNG file with the texture. Our PNG file has to be 16 by 16 pixels big, because that's the size of every Minecraft texture. I'm not going to go over how to create a texture in this video, but in the next video I'll outline how to do that with a program called paint.net. So I have already created my texture here, so I'm just going to drag it into the textures.items folder. However, I need to rename it, so we're going to do refactor rename, and rename it to the ID of the item, so example item. Let's click OK, and item should now be in the game. However, I made one small mistake. Instead of model, it should be models, so let's rename this package to models.item. Click OK, and now we are ready to see the item in the game. So let's click the run client button here, and wait for the game to load. And once we've loaded in, let's go to the miscellaneous tab and scroll to the bottom, and there we go. We can see this example item that I've added, and it works exactly the same way as any normal item in Minecraft. So now that we've created an item, let's create a block. So let's save and quit, and let's create a block init class, exactly the same way that we created an item init class. We might as well just copy this deferred register to the block init class, but change the item to block, the items to blocks, and this item to blocks as well. Now we can click Ctrl+Shift+O to import net.minecraft.block.block, and now we have a block init register. So let's create a public static final registry object of block, and let's call it example block, and this is going to be blocks.register, the name of our block, so example block, and then in here we're going to do abstract block.properties.create, and here we can take a material and a material color, which is going to be the color of the material on the map. So let's do material dot, and whatever material you want, I'm just going to use iron, and then material color dot, which is the color of the map, and I'm just going to set it to gray. Now let's press Ctrl+Shift+O to import everything, and Ctrl+Shift+F to arrange it like this. Now after this bracket, we can do dot, and then we can set all the values for our block. So let's do hardness and resistance. Hardness is how long it takes to mine, and resistance is how much it resists explosions. So these two links will be in the description, and these are pages where you can find the hardness and explosion values of all the default Minecraft blocks. Mine is going to be similar to a block of iron, so mine's going to have a hardness value of 5. So let's select a hardness value of 5. So let's go back into Eclipse and set this to 5F because it's a float. And for the resistance values, I'm going to look at explosion. I want it to resist about as much as an iron block, which is 6. So let's use 6F. Now over here, let's select our harvest tool, which is going to be tool type dot, and then you can select the tool that you want it to be harvested with. I'm going to select pickaxe, which is the default, but you can change that later. Then I'm going to do harvest level. 0 is wood, 1 is stone, 2 is iron, 3 is diamond, I think. So I'm just going to set that to 2. Let's sort this again. And now I'm going to set the sound, which is going to be sound type. Then you can select the sound that the block makes. So again, there isn't iron, but there's metal. So my block is going to make a similar sound to iron. Let's use Ctrl+Shift+F to sort it, and that is our blockinit class. So back in tutorial mod, we can now do blockinit.blocks.register bus. However, we've made a block, but we haven't made an item that corresponds to a block. You can do that in item_init instead of new item using. Instead of new item, you can use new block item, or you can do this automatically in the tutorial mod class, which is what I'm going to do now. The downside to doing this automatically is that you can't select a specific item group or creative tab for each block, so I'm just going to put them all into the miscellaneous creative tab. So at the top here, after this at mod, I'm going to add another at mod, but this time .eventBusSubscriber, where I'm going to set the mod ID equal to tutorial mod, so the main class .mod ID, and set the bus equal to bus.mod. Let's press Ctrl+Shift+O to import bus, and we don't need a semicolon over here because this is a tag. So now that we've done that, we can add subscribe events to our class. So let's go down here and create an @subscribe event called public static void on register items, and this is going to take a final registry event dot register item event, and let's open this here. So after we register our blocks, when we start registering our items, we want to go to blockinit.blocks.getEntries, which is a collection of our registry objects, .stream.map. So for each registry object, we want to do registry object get, which gets our registry object. You can ignore the error for now. Then type dot for each, like so, and then for each block, draw like an arrow, and then open curly brackets, and then finish it with this, and now all the errors should go away. So now for each block that we've registered in our blockinit, we can write some code. And that code is going to be event.getRegistry, which is all of our items, .register. And now we can add an item to register. And now we register a new item, but this isn't just an item, it's going to be a block item, which is an item that has a block associated with it, which is going to take the block and new item dot properties, and then we're going to add a group to it because we want to put all of the block items in an item group, which is going to be item group dot miscellaneous for now. But now we want to set registry name, and this is important because otherwise it's not going to have the ID that we set here and the ID that we set here. And we set the registry name of the item to the registry name of the block. And that is actually it. You can press Ctrl-Shift-F, and now for each block that we create an item as well. We register it, and we put it in the item group and give it the registry name of the block. And that should be all the Java code for the block. Now we need to create a bit more JSON files than last time. Let's start by going into the lang, adding a comma, and doing block.tutorialmod.example block, and set it to example block. So now we need to create a block state, which we don't have to do for items. So let's create a new package, call it .blockState with an S at the end, and click finish. Now in here we want to create a new file and call it example block.json. And let's open some brackets. Now what we can do here, depending on some code within the mod, we can change the model of the block, or like the rotation, based on where it's facing, but our block is always going to be facing the same way. So let's create a new thing called variance, and open brackets here. All our variants are going to be the same, so let's just have an empty key, and then we can open curly brackets again, and in here we put model, and then we set it to tutorial mod, which is our mod ID, :block / example block, and then end it like so. So now for all the variants, we just give it this one model, which we're going to create now. So now, where it says models.item, let's create a new package and remove the item and replace it with block. So now we have item and block here, and let's create a new file, which is going to be called example_block.json again. And this time we're going to create a block model. And now let's go to our item model, and we can copy this, but instead of item generated, we're going to have block/cube all, which means all the textures on each side are the same. And now instead of layer 0, we need all. And here we can put the texture, so we're going to have blocks, and then instead of example item, we'll have example block. And that's it for our model. However, because we made an item block as well, we can go to item and create an item model for our block. So let's do example block.json. And in here we just need one thing, which is parent, and that's going to be tutorial mod block / example block. And that's just going to set our item model to the default generated model of the block that we've already created. Now we can create the texture for our block. Again, I'll show you how to make this in the next video. So let's do textures.blocks, because in here we use textures.blocks / example block. So I've prepared a texture that I've made before, and now I'm going to drag it into the blocks section here and rename this to example block. And now it points to our texture. However, this is all the assets that we need, but for blocks, they don't by default drop themselves. We need to tell it that when we mine it in survival, it's going to drop the block that we need. So in our source main resources, we can create a new package, and this time instead of assets, it's going to be data.tutorialmod.loot_tables.blocks. And then click finish. And then inside here, let's create again a file called example_block.json. And in here we type the loot table. So this JSON is a little bit bigger than before, but you can always copy it every time you make a new block. So let's create a type key and set the type to Minecraft block. Then let's create the pools key, and it's always going to pick one of the pools. So let's create a list this time with these square brackets. Let's create a pool, again inside it with curly brackets. And then for our roles key, so it's going to roll this pool one time. And let's give it an entries, which is the stuff that we want it to drop. So for one of the entries, it's going to have the type of Minecraft item, and the name, which is the name of the item, of tutorial mod. And from the tutorial mod, we want to drop example block, like so. So this may look a bit big, but every time you create a block, you just copy it, change the name up here, and change this name here, and it should give you the right thing. And that's actually it, so we can load the game now and see what happens. So in our block state, I used the tutorial thing wrong. It should be tutorial mod, so now it's actually going to load our block. So now if we go back to Minecraft, we can press F3 and T, and it's going to reload everything. And in our block drops thing, we put the 1.0 in speech marks, and it's a number, so we don't need speech marks for it. But this time, because we changed the data, we need to close Minecraft and open Minecraft again. And once we've reloaded the game, we can win this with a stone pickaxe, an iron pickaxe, or a diamond pickaxe, as we set the harvest level to stone. And there we go, we have created an item and a block with our mod. Unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. In the next episode, I'll be teaching how to create textures and maybe create a tab for all the items. So thank you all for watching. If you like what you see, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.